Friends, there's been a lot of AMD GPU news in the news lately, which is a lot about the RX 590 that should be coming out sometime in the near future. And we have a lot to talk about with that, but that's not the purpose of today's video. If you want us to cover the 590 in a separate video, let me know down in the comments below. But then there is also notifications about their brand new 7nm GPUs powered by Vega 20 with the Radeon Instinct MI60 and MI50 accelerators, which are supposedly supposed to be hot stuff when it comes to actually doing virtualized workflows in data centers. But the one thing that people just kind of have been skipping over, maybe not people, but just me in general, is I've just kind of forgot about Navi, which we have some new information about Navi, potentially good, potentially not. This is one of those videos that you take with a giant grain of salt because we're going to be discussing what's out there floating on the interwebs and talking about how Navi is going to affect your life, how it's going to affect Nvidia's bottom line, and how it's going to affect AMD's rise to the top. So let's jump into it after I tell you that today's video is actually brought to you by Ting, my friends. Ting is the mobile carrier that does phone service differently. They have no startup fees, no contracts, no plans, and best of all, you pay for only what you use. They have nationwide LTE coverage in the US, which means you'll have great network coverage from coast to coast, and almost any phone is going to work with Ting, whether it's the brand new iPhone to that rusty old Motorola Razr that you have back at your grandparents' house. Those will work on Ting. They have reliable customer service. They don't want you to speak to a robot ever, so if you call, they'll pick up within 2 rings. They also have Discord support, so if you want to just not talk to anybody and you actually want to communicate via your computer, they also have that as well. We'll leave a link for that in the video description. So my friends, if you want to be part of the people who do mobile service differently, if you're usually on Wi-Fi and you can pay a little bit less for your mobile phone bill because you don't need that much data and you just don't call a whole bunch of people anyways, check out Ting. Go to ufd.ting.com in the video description and get $25 off your bill or $25 off a new phone from the Ting shop. So you can try Ting for free, again, with the link in the video description, ufd.ting.com. And with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about Navi, what it means, what it could be, and what WCCF Tech, the place of places when it comes to GPU rumors, is saying about this. So this actually is tied to a rumor that we covered a long while ago. So what they're reporting right now is that AMD Navi will have 40 compute units and is codenamed Navi 12. So Navi is going to have 40 compute units and be called Navi 12, where this is Vega 10 and it's called the Vega 56 because it has 56 compute units, which means that Navi is going to have less compute units than the current Vega lineup. This is coming back from a rumor we talked about all the way in April from Fudzilla, where they reported that AMD Navi is no high-end GPU. So what they're expecting is that Navi, instead of trying to compete with Turing, instead of trying to compete with what was then Volta, AMD is just going to go to the bare bones profitable approach, which is going with consoles and building something that is sufficient for the next-gen PlayStation 5 or Xbox 2. Navi with 40 compute units would indicate that AMD is definitely taking that approach, and they're not necessarily going to be trying to go toe-to-toe with something that has real-time ray tracing cores as well as tensor cores for their deep learning super sampling. This is also something that we can see with AMD's release of their 7nm data center GPUs, which are powered by Vega. AMD, even in their benchmarks regarding these cards, excluded any performance that included tensor cores from their comparisons to Nvidia graphics cards. Whether or not you want to consider that cheating or just stacking the deck in their favor, which I definitely consider it that, AMD was not really ready to compete with Nvidia on tensor core performance, with AI learning, with real-time ray tracing. It's not where they're going. And so instead of trying to beat Nvidia at their own game, which is at the top of the market, they're just going to come in swinging at the mid-tier, which 40 compute unit Navi would indicate that's what they're going to go ahead and do. So WCCF Tech, again, taking this with a grain of salt. So what they're positing is that if the ratio of stream processors to compute units on the cards actually stays the same as with the current architecture, which is about 64 stream processors to every compute unit, we'll end up with 2,560 stream processors. So for reference sake, this XFX RX 580 has 2,304 stream processors. 2,560 isn't a whole heck of a lot more than 2,304, which is kind of interesting that AMD would be taking this approach of not really beating the Vega 56 and not really beating the RX 580. It seems like that they would be doing a direct upgrade path from the 580 to a 680 rather than trying to replace Vega at all. And if we just go ahead and take a look at the RX 590 rumors that are circulating out on the internet, it looks like these things are only going to be RX 580s that are a little bit more overclocked. This one has a core clock of 1,450 megahertz. They're expecting the RX 590s to come in with core clocks of around 1,600. So only 150 megahertz more, which is not going to significantly change anything. So the only improvements that we could look to have from AMD's Navi graphics cards has to come in the architectural lineup or with the process change. So currently Polaris is on 14 nanometers. The new RX 590s are supposed to be on 12 nanometers, and that likely with Navi being on 7 nanometers, we would see some performance efficiency increases, even if we're not exactly getting performance gains with 2,560 stream processors. One of the interesting things that WCCF Tech does talk about here is that in an article that they did a while ago, back in June, Navi or AMD is not going to have a flagship GPU to compete with Nvidia until 2020. So we have another 18 months of green team dominance if all is to be believed. And this is coming out of the fact that if we look at what is said in the Fudzilla article that I'm mentioning from April, AMD developed the Navi architecture not for gamers on the PC, but rather for gamers on the consoles. And so the PlayStation 5 should be what was the driving force behind the new Navi GPUs. And that means that it's likely going to be better than a lot of people's gaming PCs, but not better than most of the top-end gaming PCs. However, from what I've been hearing around the internet, this is also just a lot of rumor. The PlayStation 5, Xbox One with the new Navi GPUs and the Zen 2 CPU should be capable of something around 11 to 12 teraflops of compute performance, which puts them in line with something like an RTX 2080, which isn't too shabby. So getting a flagship console sometime in 2019 that can actually compete with the GTX 1080 Ti or an RTX 2080 actually isn't too bad, but that could also be a little bit too high for us to expect, considering 2,560 stream processors likely won't be able to output that unless the Navi architecture is so much better than what we've seen from Polaris or from Vega. AMD would really have to pull a rabbit out of their butt in order to make this work. So if we take a look at WCCF's AMD roadmap from right now, what they're saying is that Vega 7 nanometers will not be coming to gamers. That's something that we've heard ever since Computex, when Lisa Su said that 7 nanometers would be coming to gamers, but she did not specify that it would actually be in Vega form. She actually really danced around that during the AMD keynote. Then they say Navi 12 will be the first Navi part to arrive and will be landing in the first half of 2019. Navi 10 has either been scrapped or will follow later sometime in late 2019 or early 2020, depending on a couple of factors. The performance level of this part will be equivalent to Vega, and it will be a small GPU based on 7 nanometers. That could be where we're seeing the PlayStation 5 RTX 2080 level performance. And when I say RTX 2080, it's more like 1080 Ti because it doesn't have the tensor cores or the ray tracing. Then Navi 20 is going to be the true high-end GPU build on 7 nanometers, and right now we're looking at a tentative 20 to 2021 launch date for that. And then Navi will also be the first architecture to transition away from GCN, and along with it the 4096 stream processor 64 compute unit limit that is inherent to their architecture implementation. So that's also one of the reasons why Vega was never better than it actually was because they're limited to how they designed their architecture. 56 compute units and 64 compute units out of Vega 56 and 64 were kind of the limits of what AMD could actually put out, and going for a Vega 78 just was never going to happen. And it appears that that might not be the case with Navi. It could potentially be the case, but we'll just have to see whether or not that becomes implemented in the future. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there's a lot to take with a gigantic grain of salt. Obviously, this is an exclusive from WCCF Tech, which have been known to be wrong, also have been known to be right, and it could go either way. Currently, it looks like we have a lot to wait on when it comes to AMD. The RX 590 is going to be a stopgap for the holidays. Whether or not you should buy that, we'll discuss in an upcoming video. And then it looks like they're not going to have anything to really compete for people to actually want to buy until the first half of 2019. But it seems like Lisa Su and everybody at the helm of AMD is content to just make their sweet console money, especially when things like Red Dead Redemption 2 and probably Grand Theft Auto 6 are just going to be on console for quite some time. And with Nvidia not really moving forward with ray tracing technology, even though it's been announced and supposedly been developed for a while, even Battlefield 5 is launching without ray tracing, even though it got delayed to implement it. It's still not there. And then Final Fantasy 15 is losing all of its ray tracing support because the lead developer is gone, and they're also canceling their DLC. It doesn't look like all of Nvidia's enhancements to their graphics cards with ray tracing cores and tensor cores are going to really pay off for them, especially with the high price. So I actually think that we're kind of in the same period that we were like 6 months ago. We've got GPUs that are way too expensive, and nobody knows what to do or whether or not they should buy right now. So let me know what you think down in the comments down below. Are you excited for Navi? Are you excited for the RX 590? What do you think about what AMD is doing and what Nvidia is doing? Let us hear from you down in the comments. Don't forget that this video was brought to you by ufd.ting.com, more specifically brought to you by Ting, the mobile carrier who does things differently. Nationwide LTE coverage, $25 off when you go to the link in the video description, either off of your service or a brand new phone from the Ting shop, ufd.ting.com, link in the video description. Go check that out. I'm going to wrap the video up there. Don't forget to let me know what you think down in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Please get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech-related content. I'm Brett with the UFD Tech Channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see your smiling faces again in the next video. Love you too.